Hi, friend.
Hi, friend.
And to the brave hearts listening out there, welcome to Permission to be Human. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Janelle.
Get ready for some real-time relationship woo and wisdom
from the front lines with occasional tantrums and tears
about how breaking rules, blurring boundaries, and tossing tradition can be catalysts for finding your truth.
Let's debunk the fairy tales we were told as children and create a new map for life.
Yes, Disney can go fuck itself.
If you're seeking permission to choose your own path,
freedom is the new F word, people,
and want to feel less alone along the way,
we got you. Please note, this is our side of the story. Our partners and metamours have their own individual experiences, and we do not speak for them.
Hi, Bravehearts.
Welcome to Permission to be Human.
I'm Janelle.
I'm Andrea. And we're here, coming at you again with our spirit crowns on. Yay, Janelle's got these flowers surrounding her face today, really soft and feminine.
This is actually a gift from a woman named Juicy at my 2022 Burning Man. And the one that Andrea is wearing is actually one that I made myself, thanks to Boombox and a craft event that she hosted. So she bought all the parts and then I created it.
Yeah. How would you describe this to someone?
It's one of those, it's like a classic Burning Man trucker hat look.
Oh.
Like if you were on Instagram, like this is like the vibe that looks like is like a very classic Instagram Burning Man look.
Okay. Yeah. And like if I looked at it, I'd be like mix between policeman hat and steampunk.
Yeah.
Like a little, right?
Perfect.
Little like bunch of silver chains. It's fun. Okay. All right. So what are we sharing today?
So, okay, Bravehearts, as you know, what we talk about on our podcast are taboo topics regarding pleasure, intimacy, marriage, divorce, all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And what we have discovered is that there are taboo topics, and then there are taboo topics. That there are, despite being external processors who share a lot of information, there has been the recognition that there's still things that we don't share.
Yeah. Even with our best friends, even with our therapists. Just, and it's kind of amazing because you think when I talk to people, and I've chatted with people over the years, and I've chatted with people since I started this podcast, and they say, well, no, I talk to my friends about things. Like that's what my friends are for. And turns out, for a few topics, not so much.
Yeah.
So some things are private, and I totally respect that. And there will be things I'm not sharing today on this podcast because, I don't want to share everything.
Right.
But what I'm seeing again and again, that when you give topics air to breathe, amidst friends, amidst strangers, anonymously, not anonymously, even in a business group that Janelle and I were in. Call out to 3 to 5 Club. When you air those questions, you feel less alone. You sometimes can release them into the air, which gives them different life. You get surprisingly novel solutions. There were so many times I said in that 3 to 5 Club, well, this is a really common problem. I'm sure everyone has this. And like, I've heard all the solutions, but like, here's what I'm going through. And then someone's like, what about this? Have you tried this? I'm like, no. Amazing.
I agree with everything that you're saying. And what I have discovered over time is that there are some topics that were so deeply laced with shame or embarrassment that I wasn't even talking about them to myself. It's not as much that I was consciously not talking about them with others. It's that I hadn't even started questioning my own assumptions about them. This whole podcast came up because in the episode that we did, I don't remember the number, but where I spoke about that I had, I did an orgasm and self-pleasure until I was 21.
Right.
That my best friend at the time, who, I can't, probably tens of thousands of hours we had spent talking in the decade between when we met when I was 11 until I was 21. And it wasn't until she listened to that episode that she learned that. And I didn't it wasn't conscious to me that she didn't know about it. But what I remember at the time was, it wasn't, oh, I'm denying or hiding talking about my orgasm. Like, I just knew I was broken, right? So there was nothing to talk about in a way. It was like, oh, Cosmos said I was supposed to be able to orgasm from self-pleasure. I didn't. I'm broken. And now we're moving on.
So interesting how you could just come to such finality on
Yes.
that, right?
Right. So it didn't feel like, oh, I need to talk about it, because it was like, here's just a fact about me that in every way was not true.
Yeah. And I also want to point out what you said earlier about not actually having a conscious conversation with it yourself, right? Like, it's not that you weren't being honest with yourself, but you weren't, I don't know, maybe that was it. You weren't really acknowledging it.
Right. I just was like, oh, I did an orgasm. I must be broken. And then that's it. Like, I didn't like sit and reflect on, oh, could that be not true? Should I see a therapist? Is there something else wrong? Like, none of that was in
Yeah. Got it.
my psyche.
Right. Was there fear of judgment or embarrassment or shame there? Or
Yes.
probably deep, right?
Right,
Like, not
because,
even
like,
acknowledged.
Right. But I was just like, oh, I'm broken in this way. And so.
Right. And I think there's also almost an egocentrism about this of like, for me, of like, oh, well, I was the only one this happened to, right? Which is like, it's not selfish exactly, but it's just like thinking I'm special or something. And actually, I'm not. There's thousands of people who have gone through said thing.
Right.
And so, and of course, there's a fear of being judged and a fear of distancing yourself from people or being deemed weird. And so I think it's normal, I think, especially when we're young and we're culturally conditioned and we haven't like grown yet to think, okay, I'm not going to talk about this. My spirit crown is jingling. Because I'm moving my head a lot. Okay. So.
And I will say that what's interesting about what happened to me at 21 is that I did tell some of my girlfriends at the time.
Right.
And they were like, oh, you should try again.
They had some solutions for you.
And yeah, and use something like in my case, I actually looked at like Gustav Klimt's paintings of women masturbating.
Of course you did. Of course you did. You looked at art books. I remember you telling this. I'm just like, yeah, I was looking at porn. You were looking at art books.
Yeah, of porn. So anyway, but my point being is that yes,
Beautiful.
like it took me 10 years to speak it, but then when I spoke it, my girlfriends had a solution.
Okay, amazing. So we're gonna go deep into. Let's just bounce back and forth on like things that we didn't talk about. You just talked about the fact that you didn't masturbate. You thought you were broken until 21. So I started self-pleasuring, just kind of accidentally realized this really early on. And I thought, like, it felt really good. And I thought, oh, well, I'm clearly doing something wrong, right? And like touching myself in a private area. Like I just had all this guilt, all this shame about it.
Right, because someone had already told you that there was a private area that you weren't supposed to talk or touch.
I guess. It was just kind of in the air, right? Like,
Right.
it was private. No one had to say it.
In the air we breathe.
It was. And so I just kept getting more and more embarrassed about it. And I mean, and although I've certainly never talked to anybody about it, but I didn't want to be caught doing it. So I would go into my massive closet, biggest closet I've ever had in my life, and like hide there and do it. And so, and I really thought it was wrong until I read, we've covered this, I know, another episode, Judy Blume's Q&A book that basically saved me from my own self-judgment. She's like, this is super normal. This is what everybody does. This is it's totally okay to do this. There's nothing wrong with you. So anyway, I don't know who I could have told, to be honest, at 12 or 13. You know, there's probably nobody for me to tell then. But in general,
Right, which is why books are so valuable.
yeah, it's true. It's true. So what's another thing that you didn't mention?
So for me, I was very selective with who I told about my lack of sexual intimacy in my marriage. I mean, obviously you knew all about it and some other friends did, but you know, we were, I would say most people actually probably had the perception that we were having a lot of sex.
What is that?
We were open and we were poly and we were in a very like sex positive community. We were going to Burning Man, right? It just felt like there was like.
Yeah. And, you know, in the same way, there were definitely times when I was not having sex with my husband for long periods of time. And yeah, I didn't tell anybody about it. It was like a source of shame. Like I was like, no, I'm supposed to be doing this. We're failing for some reason. We we can't figure it out because of different reasons. And yeah, I certainly did not share that with even my girlfriends. No way. So there's one big one right there.
Right. Either not having sex is a thing of shame to not, both of us had the experience of not talking about.
Exactly. Okay, what else for you?
For me was the fact that I sometimes faked orgasms.
Yep.
And
yep, me too. In fact, I remember sharing it once and like thinking, oh, I should not have said that out loud. I will never say that out loud again. This was like before I was married or anything, but like there was some judgment I felt or sensed. But yeah, for sure, did not tell people that.
Yeah. And I remember when I finally released it to my partner, where I was like, I'm in a relationship where I want to be authentic and true, and I'm not in this moment. And it was probably like the hardest, scariest, most shame-filled thing I've ever said. It released me from myself, because it released me from having to fake an orgasm.
Okay, so what would you say to people who are like, oh, I don't want to disappoint this other person, but I would be so free and feel so released if I said this out loud. Should they do it or not? I mean, that is hard.
Yeah, I am not here to say an answer of you should do it or not.
Right.
Because another partner, I don't know what the partner how they're gonna respond. I only knew that the pressure inside of me to not be like true on the inside and on the outside had gotten to the point where it did not feel good to me, right? I would almost rather lose the partner than have it be off, me be off.
Okay. But so I see that you were choosing yourself, but you were waiting until the discomfort was pretty significant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Let's see. So what about that big D word? Divorce. Yeah. So I'm not divorced. I am married. I'm still married.
Yeah.
And I've been married. I've never been divorced. But I think I was even afraid to say that out loud to my husband, or even talk about, oh, well, I suppose if we got, we never said it, right? We just never would say it. It was too scary. It even feels scary to me now.
I remember when you guys did say
it. Yeah. Like, and this was not saying, oh, we're gonna. It was just like, what if, or like, what's going on? Like, how are we going to remedy this? Like, what would it look like if? And that was a big deal, saying it out loud to him. Now, I still didn't I think now I would say, now I've actually come to a comfort with it and expressing it to others and saying like, oh, well, if we got divorced or, if we separated. But for a long time, I would never have said that out loud to anyone, that we were considering it, that I was scared of it or anything. It was just like a word that was off limits.
Right. It's funny that you say that, because we had an interesting difference of memory between my husband and I, which was what I was really resistant to was ever joking about divorce. Do you know any couples who are like, oh, that's divorce worthy, or like, oh, that's grounds for divorce, when they're in a fight with their partner? Sometimes they're joking, sometimes they're serious, but it's like, it's that there's a quality to that that I always was like, oh, I'm not okay with that. I feel like I expressed that to my partner of like, okay, one of my boundaries is that we never joke about divorce. My understanding many years into it was that he heard it as, we can never mention the word. If we mention the word, it means we're getting divorced. Very different.
Oh my God, so different.
And yet,
yeah.
As a result, we never talked about the word divorce until we got divorced.
Yeah, it's a big one. I was recently on a podcast with Karen Covey. I think you were on a podcast with her too. Is that right?
Not yet. Not yet. I will be.
Yeah. So she is a divorce coach, and she mentioned that she really wanted to have in real life Braveheart, or in real life conversations, groups for women who are considering divorce or going through it. And there's no way she can do that because nobody will fucking come, right? Because it's too hard. It's too hard to show up, potentially see someone you know and think, yeah, we're thinking about it. Yeah, it's on my mind. And I totally get it. I mean, I don't blame anyone. I'm just like, this is just such a taboo topic.
To acknowledge internally and then externally.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
Total compassion for myself and for anyone who is like chatting about it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one. Back to you.
Another one is how much money I was making as I started out as an entrepreneur, which was not very much, and how much I was relying on my husband to support our lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Did anything shift for that at some point for you?
I would say I have been on such a deep money journey. Since then, there was a real deep, like underworld journey for me in my relationship to money and my worth being tied to money, and what it meant to be married to someone who was making a lot more money. So our lifestyle was bigger. It was very complex, and so things have shifted for me. But I would say it has taken years and years and years to like uncover all of that and it's really interesting. I mean, in our culture, we don't talk about money.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that like this is the biggest taboo topic of all. Like it kind of seems like.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have any clarity about that? Like because you have shared like how much you spent on a coat or.
Right. And how much debt I'm in or different things. Yeah. I would say that for the clarity is coming to terms with what is true for me, where my worth lies in relation to money, which is that my worth is not tied to money. And that I also believe that how I'm relating to money now is, for all intents and purposes, not relatable by most people in our culture.
There's a mic drop. Yeah.
And my relationship to money now is without a doubt one of the things that has me feeling so free, so joyful, and so radiant, because I feel like I have broken through bonds that were like totally tying me down. And yet I cannot say to someone, and you should do what I'm doing.
Right. Okay, so I think this ties back to what we've spoken about many times in the podcast about being in your radiance. Just on the Braveheart Conversation episode, we talked about if you're gonna announce or share an unconventional choice with a loved one who may have more conventional views, you want to make sure you're in your radiance when you do it. I hear that you're in your radiance about money, and so you can talk about it.
Right. And I recognize that the people I'm telling, my dad, my ex-partner, anyone, they're just like, what? And I'm like, yeah.
What?
With my big smile. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. And anyway.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. I asked you on the spot. Okay. What else we got here? I guess it's my turn. Anxiety and like the consideration of anti-anxiety meds. This is like a total do not talk about topic for a long time for me. I am not on meds, and I've considered them, and I've been like, I can't talk about that. That is like, there's so much shame around that. It's such a source of, I had fear of judgment. I had fear of hurting myself. It felt like a crutch, all of that. And I think so much of what changes here, over time, it's just that you experience more. And then you're like, oh, I see. I was judging that. Now I'm experiencing it. Great. So yeah, I definitely did not feel free to talk about that. I think now, even if I did get on meds, I would just be pretty open about it. I mean, there's definitely a shift of mental health. Speaking in our society, so that's good. That's good.
Yes. Yeah, and speaking of mental health, like there are times that I hid in my closet or under my desk because of my lack of self-worth in relation to money specifically, and just wanted to disappear. I wouldn't put it into the category of like suicide ideation, but it was in the like, can I just disappear? Can I just not be here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And most people who see me know me would just, see my smile and my enthusiasm and all that and have a hard time being able to consider me in moments like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can also relate to, just being very, very depressed. And not wanting to tell anyone that it was that bad or that, And I think probably there's some addiction tendencies. I don't really go into it any deeper than that, but like knowing that nothing serious, debilitating to my health, but knowing that I have an addiction to something and feeling like weak and shame about that and not telling anyone and handling it myself. And that worked out for me okay, but I don't know if it gotten worse. We needed help.
Right. For you, something that I know you've struggled with the whole time is your nail biting.
Right. Yeah. I'm clearly addicted to biting my nails. And that's so like I can talk about it because anyone who sees me can see my nails.
Yes.
So that definitely has control over me. And it is something that I kind of carry with me. I've gone through phases of letting that go. But in general, I can't keep it a secret because anyone can see my nails. And so that kind of brings up a whole other kind of secret that like you can't keep a secret.
Right.
Or something you have shame about that's like right now at the open.
And interestingly, I think that some things are often out in the opening to everyone else, but you just don't think that they are.
It's probably true. Interesting. Do you have a specific example of that?
I would just think of someone who might have like an eating disordered eating, right?
Yeah.
Who has the perception that they're overweight, but everyone can see that they're not overweight, or something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's true. Like your perception of yourself is so different than what people may see. Yes, lots of compassion for that too. Or basically, too. I've definitely like I've eaten a whole pint of ice cream and been like, well, I'm not telling anyone about that. Even though I'm sure I'm not the only one. But
you're definitely not the only one.
But like just in like stress eating, like times of like, and then, feeling like total shit after that. But it's funny. I put something on here, but I realized I'm like, oh no, I totally talk to people about that. But in the beginning when I was a mom and I was like, I don't know how to fucking do this. Like, this is so hard. No, people kept telling me to listen to my intuition and I didn't hear a fucking thing. I was so angry. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, and so I think there was a short period where I was like, oh, I don't know how to do this.
Like, I don't know how to be a mom.
Yeah. I don't know how to do like these basic things. Like it's not coming to me. Like people said, oh, it'll come to you. Like you'll know what to do. And I'm just like, nope. Like, and a human's life hung in the balance, right? Like it was so frustrating in the beginning, but I did tell people that. I think there was a small part of me like wanted to hang on to it and be like, oh, it's too shameful. But I needed help and I reached out. So anything else? You're good. So let's talk about like when did this change for you? And we talked about one of those topics, but or has it changed at all? Like, are there still things, of course, that you don't tell people? I'm sure there are. Everyone has private things. That's fine.
Right. We're not advocating for sharing. There's discernment in life.
Discernment.
I would say, I've had very close girlfriends my entire life, and as we have discussed, I'm an external processor. So I think what changed is when my subconscious shame and denial about things started to come to the surface as my awareness about myself increased. If you listen to the episode of the butt plugs and tantrika episode, I didn't know I had shame. I mean, I'm one of those people who read Brene Brown's Gift of Imperfection, thought it was the most incredible book. It's all about shame. And then I was like, well, it's really fascinating because I don't experience shame. And like that is like the depth of the naivete or like awareness I had of certain emotions in my body. And so over time, as I did different retreats and different, somatic body work things, suddenly it was like, oh, that feeling, oh, that's what shame is. Oh, now I know what shame is. And I remember like, you know, having the flashbacks of like having a boy come home after school, and we were like naked in my bedroom, it's high school, and my mom came home and I hid him in the closet and I like snuck him out of the house, and I just never thought about that again. I never
Smushed it down.
Just like smushed it down. And then when it came up during that tantrika session, I was like, oh, that's what shame is. That's there it is.
Wow. I think this is really important for Bravehearts to hear, and just for me to hear right now. It's like, no, there are things that you have pressed down so far, you can't even see them anymore. Like, they're out of sight. You don't hear about them. Nothing brings them up until something does.
And so for me, that was really like what shifted for me. It was the awareness. I don't know if to discuss, like, I can't say why that happened, other, you know, psychedelics and polyamory and all the things I was doing on my journey that allowed like a expanding, a shifting of my compressed state.
Yeah.
Where things could start to bubble up. And then I discovered them. Mm-hmm. And then once I discovered them, sometimes I talked about them. And sometimes I still didn't even know that they were a thing. It still took a while to figure it out.
Yeah, it's a process. It's patience. It's years sometimes.
Years. Yeah.
So for me, I think there were kind of two aha moments that happened over the course of, not a moment, but more like 5 or 10 years. Or like, one was, oh, like we're all so similar rather than different. Like, this is a big belief, like a massive shift in my belief system that didn't, of course, just happen one day. But as I kept spending time in the world with people, I was like, oh, like like, it's the bad news, good news that I tell my clients, like, you're not special at all. Mm-hmm. And you're really special. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But those things are both true, right? And like what unites us is much greater than what divides us. Like, we're all humans. We all have the human experience. We all want to be loved. Like, there's so much that we're similar on. Mm-hmm. And I really think for the first 20 years of my life, I'm like, no, I'm different. Mm-hmm. And so when I found that out, I was like, oh, with the shame and the embarrassment stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that's feeling this way. Mm-hmm. And that just made me feel better. Mm-hmm. So that shifted things. And then the other moment was, I realized, I can remember like being on my back patio when I really had this. Like, I had been practicing it probably for a while, but I realized this looking at my little androgynous Buddha on the water feature, thinking, oh, yeah, like, when you stop judging others, you stop judging yourself. Andrew, when you stop judging yourself, you stop judging others. And it's interesting how those things work together. Mm-hmm. And they would just like fall away. Like, one would fall away when I'd stop doing the other. Mm-hmm. And I just had so much less judgment. And I'm like, oh, that is so freeing. Mm-hmm. But it's actually, because it's actually kind of exhausting to keep that up. Mm-hmm. Like, to keep judging, to keep saying, no, they're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. No, you're not, you don't have it right. Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh, it just feels like you're not defending a cage anymore. And so, or defending what's yours. Mm-hmm. And so when that eased as well, then I could talk to people about stuff. Mm-hmm. And just be me.
Right. What that's bringing up for me was remembering there was a point where I really wanted my husband to kiss me every night before bed. Like, I just want to kiss before bed every night. And then he became resistant to that. And that made me sad. And so that was like a point of tension in our marriage. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember how, but then there was a revelation that at my mom's funeral, when I was 34, my dad had gotten up, given the eulogy, and shared the prayer that he said to my mom every night before bed. Yeah. Their entire 37 years of being together with a kiss. And I realized, like, right, that it was 34. I've been married now. I was like probably 44 or something, right? Married, and realizing that, oh, like that had gotten into my subconscious of showing it, though that's what must be the sign of a good marriage. And so I need a kiss every night that really wasn't mine. Right? I had taken on it was a beautiful experience, but nonetheless it wasn't mine. But I was making my marriage wrong because I didn't have what my parents had. And once I saw that, and like that realization again, like bubbled to the surface, I was able to be like, oh, the thing that I thought I needed and wanted, that I was holding on to and defending and like causing conflict in my marriage about, was like, oh, it's not even mine.
Oh, wow. Yeah. But this is how we take things in when we're young.
Yes.
We're like, oh, great. That's what that means. Super. Put that away. Done. Next thing.
Right.
Because we don't know to look any deeper necessarily, or at least I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think I did.
I did not.
Seems like my daughter does.
Yeah. That's hope for the world.
It is actually. And I think so ultimately what we've been talking about is this idea of radical acceptance that I like said to you, I think early on. I was just like, I just feel like when we boxed early on, I was like, you just have this radical acceptance of everything I'm saying. Like I would just say something and I'd expect you to be like, oh my gosh, what? Like, and you never did, right? And I was like, oh, there's just this radical acceptance. And so when we radically accept ourselves, we can share easier. Not to say everything should be shared. But there might be something, and I invite you, Bravehearts, to think about something that actually would feel better if you shared. Just to think about it.
On my journey of personal growth work, one of the systems that I came across was the internal family systems model, IFS.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. And it focuses on that there are no bad parts within us, that all of us are inherently good. And that all parts of us, even the part of us that's like, fuck you part, is actually a good part, but it's defending something in a way that is maybe no longer useful, right? That part came online as a child because it had to defend us from something in an area or a person that we were unsafe with.
Yeah.
That is still kind of running the show today, but in actuality is coming from a place of protection, but is kind of could potentially be blocking the love that we're trying to receive now. That's just one example of it. But learning to accept all the parts of me, even the parts I quote unquote didn't like, was really impactful on my journey. Like recognizing that I did have anger, that I did have disappointment, that it was okay to express those things. Like I was definitely in the like smiling, everything is great. Like I knew like 4 adjectives for emotions. Right? Like happy, good, like enthusiastic, positive. That's it. That's all I knew. That's all I operated in.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I had actually like just completely discounted the parts of me that were, did feel angry, did feel sad, did feel disappointed. And allowing those to be present, to be like, oh, those are okay. It's part of this journey as well.
Beautiful. All right, Bravehearts. That's all we have today.
Yeah.
We see you.
Yep. And we know that there are taboo topics and that there are taboo topics. And the more we learn about ourselves, the more we can hold ourselves. Yay! Softly and lightly.
See you on Instagram and at the Braveheart Conversations. We love you.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Do you need permission to be human? You got it. Listen, subscribe, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about us at permissiontobehuman.live.